Is my mic doing okay? Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Let's get started. So, hi everyone. My name is Sukino. I am and now I'm working in um, decentralized social media space. The project I'm working on is called Autism. And here's a bit about me since I prefer to stay anon. I can't really tell you my past work experience, but I can tell you about what I do to pass time. So when I'm not working, you'll probably find me chopping woods in Valheim and building a log house. Sometimes you'll see me fighting space pirate in No Man's Sky, um, or watching a movie in VR chat. These are all my favorite activities to do during my pastime. And even when I'm working, I try to stay in VR as well. So I've been working um, in my spaceship using Immerse with my Oculus Quest for work as a monitor replacement, and it's been pretty fun. And this is where autism is built. So a little bit about autism first. I do get many people asking me why the social network's name is called autism, and I do want to start with that. So autism is basically a broad range of condition characterized by challenges with social skills, repetitive behavior, speech, and nonverbal communications. These are things that cause people to have difficulty fitting into societies. Um, and you probably know someone with autistic traits, or this is a wide spectrum, so you could see it, in yourself. Sometimes you can see a more extreme case. Um, but regardless, a lot of people with autistic traits do this thing called masking. What that means is that they um, find ways to camouflage their autistic traits so that they can better fit into society. It's basically a social survival strategy that is used um, to be seen as more neurotypical by others, so that you can achieve, your goals. So not just autistic people do that. Everybody kind of do that in some way, in some manner. For example, when we go to work, we will appear to be more professionals. Hopefully, we're actually more professionals, but at least we want to be seen as more professionals. We'll refrain from cursing and stuff like that. When we are hanging out with friends, we tend to be a bit more cheerful. It's not realistic for us to be cheerful 24 hours of the day, but when we're with our friends, we tend to be more friendly, cheerful, so people enjoy our presence. So in short, everybody kind of do that. We um, change our behaviors based on our environment, um, and we do it in such a way that others and us can feel safer to collaborate and co-create. In each other's presence is kind of important for everyone to be able to collaborate in a big number. Um, But these kind of like dynamics, how does it affect our speech? How does it affect our behaviors in the wider society? Especially since I'm building a social media, how does it affect our speech on social media? We can kind of take a look by seeing how the greater environment treats speech and opinions. So here's a little comparison of media coverage of Hong Kong protests in 2019. You can see that just from the title itself, CNN represent a very different view with a very different picture versus the People's Daily focuses on a completely different side of the story. It's hard to tell which side is right and which side is wrong when both sides is so extreme like this. Um, but oftentimes from news outlet, these are the story you're left with, and these are the data you're left with to make decisions about the role. um, Something closer to home, the United States Capitol attack. You can also see different media coverage by CNN, Fox News. So not just on international event between two different newspaper from two different country, even on news outlet within the same land, we are seeing very polarized view. Um, when it's not politics, let's say transgender athletes, we are also have very polarized view when we look at Fox News, CNN versus USA Today's. Um, some is very pro the new regulations of not allowing trans women to compete in sports, while others are very against the idea, saying that it's a cause for fairness in sportsmanships. Um, so we have all these different outlets. The interesting, like the and most of the outlets have very polarized view on any topic, any speech. It's kind of like, I use a picture of sharks infested water here. Basically, the feeling I get when I make a public tweet with my real life accounts, um, that's what I feel like. I feel like I'm swimming in waters with a bunch of sharks. I don't know if some shark is going to be hungry to eat me, or maybe they'll look back at my past and be like, oh, you deserve to be eaten today. It feels dangerous. So what can we do? Here's a famous quote from one of my favorite movies. Man is least himself when he talks in his own person. Give him a mask and he will tell you the truth. When you're using your real life identity, you mask your behavior for whatever reasons. Sometimes those reasons are good. Sometimes those reasons are good and you're doing it at will. Sometimes those reasons are more negative and you're doing it by coercion or by force, um, or by fear, or fear of being canceled, fear of being deplatformed. Um, so with all these, I observe a need for the world needing a type of social media somewhat as a public good. And the idea of public good is it's kind of like electricity and water. Once you provide it to a group of people, you can't really take it back. Like street lights. If you put a street light on the street, anyone who walks on the street will see street lights. It's not something that you can take back or you can exclude others from enjoying the street lights. And for this social platform to achieve the stated goals of being pro-social and being pro-truth, encouraging people to speak their mind, to be themselves, um, I believe the social networks needs to be anon-friendly. It needs to be decentralized, and it needs to have non-excludable access. Once you give access to someone to speak, to read, to consume content, we can't really take it away. And this is the idea behind autism. And I'm going to dive into like different pieces to kind of further explain why I build autism certain ways before I dig into how it's actually built. So decentralized identity is a big piece of this. We want to make sure that when anyone can join, the bar to entry should be little to none. And they are able to see anyone who join. It's not a closed garden where only Twitter can see, the user base. There should be a open garden where everybody can come in and check things out as they please. Um, for this decentralized identity to work, it also needs to be openly verifiable by anyone. Not, for example, in OAuth, traditional OAuth, only Twitter can verify your username and password, or only, different um, Web2 authority can, uh, verify your password and username. For decentralized identity, we need to make sure that anyone can always verify, um, you know, in an open manner. And for that, we actually come to the conclusion pretty quick that Ethereum address should be used as social identity. It is already used on crypto Twitter by many people putting their ENS name as their Twitter handle. And it is also used by different cross-chain projects as kind of their DeFi identity. You can see that once you create an address in MetaMask, it works in Uniswap for Ethereum, it works in Uniswap for Optimism, works in SushiSwap for Binance. It just extends across multiple network, and the extensibility is what we really want to go after. Um, and for me, it make a lot of sense to build Ethereum on top of it, to build Autism on top of Ethereum, as it already solved a lot of the problem for us. Um, and the second part is we need to make sure that data is decentralized. Um, what that means is that we are emphasizing on no single point of failure. So the network should be operated by as many people as possible. Um, Even if I get hit by a bus, die next day, the network should be able to be up, even though nobody have access to the AWS I'm using or the domain name that I own. People should still be able to prop the network back up just by running additional nodes. Um, and for that, after looking at many different solutions, I actually find GunDB to be the most flexible tools for the problem that we are trying to solve, and you'll see um, why in just a few minutes. But basically, what GunDB is a peer-to-peer database that can run in the browser. So any person who visit Autism will have a local copy of GunDB, grabbing to only requesting only the pieces of data that they want to see. Um, right now, it requests everything because we have so few data, and we're basically serving everyone's content as the global fees. But in the future, you can only follow certain people, and your local GunDB will only have the data of these people instead of the entire network, um, which make this data layer highly available because it has duplicates of copies in of small copies of the database in many places. Um, all we need to make sure is that there are enough nodes that duplicates all the contents all the time, especially during the early days of the network. So for that, I will always be operating a few seed nodes that duplicate all valid data from all the ETH address that has joined Autism. That way, when people request that data, it is always going to be available. As network grows, it might become unscalable, costs might become prohibitively expensive. For that, we have different ideas around rotating old content onto cheaper alternative and lowering the cost of just maintaining GunDB, which is still kind of which for its limitation, it serves a really good purpose of syncing small pieces of data across um, many peers. So, and the last thing is anon-friendly. It is very important for the previous reason that I talked about. Basically, um, being decentralized ensures that everybody can have a voice without fear of being excluded, without fear of being the platform. We gotta go a bit further if we want to encourage people to be themselves. We need to also try to minimize the fear of getting canceled. Um, if we use a real life identity, we might not be able to speak our mind, but at work we have more credibility. The challenge of building a non-friendly network is that if everybody remains completely anonymous, it's very difficult to tell the good content from the trolls. Um, you can look at 4chan. As sometimes you can find gems in 4chan from anon posts. Most of the time, you see a bunch of trolls and a bunch of garbage shit posts that that drowns out the rest of the good content. So how do we solve that problem and build a non-friendly network that is actually pro-social? So we have a concept of transferable reputation, which has been talked about for quite a while now. The idea is you can transfer only part of your identity to this anonymous entity, so that this anonymous entity carries doesn't have to start from zero. Basically, it can start with a higher reputation without linking back to who the original user is. So in real life example is I can always show someone my passport by covering all the important piece of information. When you see that, at least you will know Sukino is a U.S. citizen. And maybe when I talk about U.S. politics, I will be more or less credible in your eyes. Um, Another example would be you can request a official transcript to be sent from a college to a grad school applications. These are examples of relying on a third party um, to vouch for you. That way, your actions or your speech carries additional reputations instead of just being fully anonymous. But both of those ways will somewhat link your real life identity. Um, will link your actions back to your real life identity. In the case of passport, like you will see my face, you will know who I am. In the case of transcript, you'll definitely see my name, you see which school I go to. You probably would even see um, that I failed at English class. Um, we can do that in a zero knowledge manner. In the financial world, there's Tornado Cash where we can send money around using Tornado as a programmatic mixers that ensures nobody, including the operator of the Tornado network, knows about who the funds come from when you take money out of Tornado Cash. Um, Now, can we do that for reputation? The answer is yes. We have a project called Interweb that is already working and working on solving this problem. Similar to Tornado Cash, where a bunch of people pull in deposits, so they increase the anonymity sets when people take it out. Interweb work the same way. It encourage people to join special groups. If they meet certain minimum reputations, and once the set get big enough, um, it's very difficult to tell um, who the member is when the member is creating proof of memberships. So the way that it works with Interrupt right now is that if you have a Twitter account, Reddit account, GitHub account with certain number of followers, you might be qualified to bronze, silver, and gold tier groups, depending on your number of stars, number of upvotes, and number of likes or followers, depending on which networks you're in. And once you're qualified for these groups, once you join the groups, you can then create a zero knowledge proof to prove that you are a member of the group without revealing who you are. And once this proof is created, the users can submit a post to Autism along with the proof to prove that they belong to part of this group. Autism will then be able to use Interweb to verify that this proof is indeed authentic, and this proof um, actually come from a member of the group that this person is claiming to be in. All while Interrep and Autism doesn't know who this person actually is. All we know is he's a member of the group. Um, of course, if there's only two people in the group, then it becomes very noticeable. But as the group get larger, the anonymity set is much higher, and it becomes very difficult to tell who created the proof. So with all that said, this is kind of how I came to the problem of decentralized social media and come to a working solutions on how to solve it with different stacks: Ethereum, GunDB, Interop, and making it as decentralized as possible, as open as possible, and as friendly as possible to non-users. So the next 10 or so minutes will be about will contains a lot of code. Basically, I'm trying to show how to put all these together. It's actually quite simple. So Autism right now runs 4 seed nodes at this address. So any users can basically npm install gun and then connect to our seed peers. That way they can get access to all the autism content. Once you're connected to Gun, um, you can then read from the autism register contract right now living on Arbitrum. And we are planning to move to Optimism at some point. Um, and the reason why you need to read events from Autism Register is that all the users who have joined Autism, their address is on this register along with their public key for GunDB. That way you can verify the content. So once you have these contract um, instantiated and read all the records updated events from this register, you'll be able to see a list of all the public keys and all the wallet address that has already joined Autism. And with that information, you can then use GunDB since you previously connected to the correct seed nodes. You can use GunDB to grab a users and then to start streaming all the messages from a particular users. Hello, sorry. Yeah, so with GoDB, once since you're already connected to the main network, you can grab a slice of the users using their public key, and then stream all the message from that particular users, without getting the rest of the data. This property is very important because we want a browser clients to be able to request just the amount of data that they need, and to be able to share just the amount of data that they need without downloading the entire network, which will be unfeasible for a browser client. And all these data are all these data are basically formatted the same way. I call it a generic message format, and basically it has a few meta informations and the actual payload of the content. We have a message type, subtype, the creator, which is the wallet address, and the time that is created. After all, this is what a generic message look like. For a specific message, let's say for a post, these are the additional data they will carry. So the type of a post message will be a post, and depending on the subtype of the message, it can either be an original post, which is a blank subtype, a reply, or a repost. And then these are the additional under payload. These are the additional information that the post can carry. And this should we are designing it this way so that it can enable different type of use. So for example, with title, with topic and with topic title and content, you can basically implement a Reddit clones with just those few pieces of informations. With reference, which is a reference to the original message ID, will allow people to implement replies and reposts. And with attachment, it allows people to attach different files, different links to the post. So this payload is designed to accommodate different usage from different kinds of social network, even though autism is really just a Twitter clone in terms of product definitions. Well, moderation is much simpler. The type is a moderations. A subtype can be any type of moderation that a user would do. Upvote, downvote, like, block. They are all kind of similar in categories where a user is applying their user moderation on a post. And all you need on top of that is just a reference ID for the previous message. Same thing for connections. You can either follow users or block users. Um, and then all you need to reference is the name of the person you're following, which is the Ethereum address. And profile, similar manners. You can and what now you basically get the gist. This data format is highly customizable and highly flexible, so that different use case can be built on top of this data layers with very little new codes to be needed to be written. Um, all this content will turn into a content hash, which will become the message ID um, of the post. That is pretty important because when the users sign a particular post, what they are signing is actually the content hash of the post, to prove that they are the original poster, or they are the person behind the identity. Um, so that is kind of, yeah, that is basically the simple, a very simplified way to put together a autism node so that you can start getting all the content, getting all the posts. There are no more than 25 lines of code in there to do that. Um, so that basically wraps up how the network is built, and I kind of want to go into a few more loose topics that I find interesting and challenging when working on this decentralized social network. One of them is threat moderations. Two main point of centralization that you know that give the moderator a lot of powers are basically site moderations and discovery. In terms of moderation, right now, autism has different moderation at different level. At the post level, just for a thread, um, we give the power to the original poster to moderate as much as they want or as little as they want. So basically, a original poster can set different moderation policy for their thread. They can pick from a few options where only people that you follow can reply, or only people that you mention can reply, or people that you block can never reply. And with this, the power of moderating the default view of your thread is in the hand of the original poster. We do want to give an alternative to um, the consumer of the content. So, for example, this post is set up so that only people mentioned can reply to this post. Um, but you see this, blue toggle right here on the right hand side that people can basically turn off thread moderation for seconds and be able to see all the posts, including any kind of um, trash post, blog post that has that the original poster has blocked. And this you can get a somewhat unmoderated view of a thread, even if the thread is moderated. I find that to be quite important for users to be able to see everything optionally, if they choose to. Otherwise, it will turn into kind of a wall of blocking each other very fast. So something that is not some moderations is not in the hand of the users and is not as easy to get around. So for example, a node operator and a UI operator will have to choose to ignore content update from any particular addresses that breaks law. Like if you operate autism, the website, um, even though I'm an anonymous user, the person operating the domain has a real life identity attached to it, and they are subject to any um, legality within their local areas. So any load operators and UI operators, they must we have ways for them to comply and conform to the local legality, if they want. Um, Now for that, we need to come up with different alternatives for users um, who who need to get around that. So let's say like you're from a areas where you know most most social content is blocked, or posts about political events is blocked. How can you consume content if all the node operator in your local areas conform to the law, which is banning all the contents that you can see? Um, in that case, we can rely less on the centralized discovery service that we want, and we can use something like a desktop apps for users to also want a full GunDB node on top of a local UI. That way, all data is local, circumventing any need for autism UI. That's kind of like a um, kind of like extreme measure. Like, yeah, since we can rely on a node operator, we're gonna become a full operator by ourselves. Download the entire network. That way, nothing is hidden from us. It works, but it also is very heavy, very costly, kind of inflexible. Not that many people would be able to use that. Um, I think as the network grows, it's important for us to be able to incentivize other users or other node operators to run nodes in different local areas and in different parts of the world. This allows us to um, have this allows us to work with as many locality as possible, while achieving our stated goal, which is to allow encourage people to be themselves, encourage more truth to be spoken in this network. Another part of another centralized part is discovery, that on autism. So right now, we basically index all messages from GunDB into a SQL database. For every post, based on your reputation, we assign a score to the post. And when you request a global feed, we rank each post based on the score and serve it to you accordingly. This is how, you know, transferable reputation is used. This is how, you know, people with more followers, their posts will rank higher than people with less followers. Um, there are interesting things we can play with this model, but the thing about this is it's still centralized. It relies on our backend, on our hosted API for you to query the message hash of all the posts. We want to decentralize as much of that as possible. I think a lot of that is needed for making the UX smooth, so that user doesn't have to wait for enough contents to be downloaded before seeing some sort of post ranks that make sense. Um, but we should have different ways to decentralize it. One naive way would be to allow users to subscribe to the views of others. Um, so th- people already kind of do that on Twitter, where they create a custom list, or they follow the followers of the person that you're following. If that makes sense. Basically, you follow the second orders of followers, kind of to expand the amount of content so you can discover in Twitter. And with autism, we can do something similar where um, some of the discovery is pushed to the users instead of the centralized API, but some sort of global ranking still kind of makes sense and still help the networks. Other things that we can do is implement more local data indexing even in the browser clients. Um, like we can use something like absurd SQL, which put a SQLite database directly in your browsers. With that, we can allow the users to download just enough data into the SQLite database inside the browser and do the queries locally so that it doesn't have to rely on central servers. Or if we want to do it somewhat in an optimistic way, we can request from the centralized API first, get all the message hash, and as the users as the clients is streaming data and inserting it into local SQLite database in the background, once it finished, it can like alert the users if there's any discrepancy between the two calculations, which is um, like if there's no discrepancy, then everything is fine. If there's some discrepancy, it means the operator of the discovery API is probably not being truthful, or has blocked some contents that away from the users. So discovery and moderations, those are kind of the things that we are playing with. Some of the ideas that is in the work. If anyone has any ideas, please hit me up. Um, Another problem for scaling the network is data archiving. Um, so as the network grows, size of GunDB will become unscalable. So let's say everybody put like 10 gigabyte, 5 movies in their GunDB. It's gonna be the network is gonna become very slow, very fast. So to lower the cost of operating a functional network, we need to find ways for users to rotate old content away from GunDB onto cheaper alternatives. So some ideas that I'm working on is we can enforce a absolute size limit on the amount of data that an Ethereum address can store in GunDB. And anything above that limit will just not propagate or not accept the update. So that size limit can actually be fairly small. Like if we limit that size limit to 4 MB, which is enough storage for 8,500 words tweets, if they are just words or links. Um, like that is actually plentiful for most users. Like some users might use more and they will need to think of ways to rotate old storage onto cheaper alternative. But for this, a lot of like existing users, I don't think their usage has been up to 4 MB yet. And like existing Twitter users, I don't think they have used 4 MB of data yet. And this will drastically put a bound on the size of the GunDB node that will run and make the cost of running it much cheaper and much more predictable. Other solutions would be to integrate with um, data archive solutions such as IPFS and Dropbox for user managed storage. Users can find ways to pin their own IPFS hash or to use their own Dropbox to always to put their existing content to offload the existing content. That way, free up the 4 MB on their GunDB that they can use for any current data syncing. The reason why GunDB is still preferred on top of IPF and Dropbox is because we want that fast peer-to-peer sync to be able to happen in the browser and on nodes across multiple different devices. IPF and Dropbox definitely have different trade-off. And sometimes they have a cost associated with it. Um, for those, these are user managed archive solutions that the cost of archiving is offloaded to users. Dropbox actually gives you 2 GB free. You just need to give them your email address. A more fun and you know, offhand, it's more fun and kind of out there ideas that I'm kind of brainstorming is that we can allow any users to permanently archive a post on an L2, let's say Optimism. The way that it would work would function similar as giving someone a Reddit award. Right now, if you give someone a Reddit award, they get clouds. They don't really get anything else. Um, I think some reward actually give them money. Um, for this, it can be a data archive reward or an archive reward where you can give someone this reactions to the post. Your post is actually um, permanently archived on an L2, and the cost to the person archiving it is the gas fees, as opposed to Reddit reward where you're paying Reddit the network and Reddit give clouds to the poster. This is much more decentralized, where you're paying gas fees to do a thing, and this action still give the original poster the same amount of clout. Um, and the last thing that I am also thinking about is different use for interrep and for semaphore proof. So I think the benefit of using Ethereum is that we have a lot of on-chain reputation already on the network. We can see who are the airdrop recipient of the Uniswap token. We can see who owns a penguin or apes. We can see who are the big Ethereum whales. There's a lot of reputations that we can on-chain reputation that we can use to build groups that are self-managed. With autism message, we can custom make a new message type for inviting and accepting a group. The idea is that some admin of a DAO, say Uniswap, can create a autism profile. They can invite all the members of the Uniswap DAO, and the Uniswap DAO member can accept by creating and submitting their semaphore proof to the network. Based on the order that they are submitted, we can then insert them into a semaphore group into the tree, and then we can use this tree in the same manner that we use interrupt today. And we can also do the same thing as interrupt, where we periodically update it to a smart contract to increase redundancy. So with this, we want to expand on the current features of of interrupt integrations that is possible in Autism right now. Right now, all you can do is to join as anonymous users if you fit any of the interrupt groups. In the futures, we want to allow users to self-organize their own semaphore group to invite their own members, and they can create different reputation badge and give to a anon address. So I say if I'm a verified user on Twitter, it means I'm prominently recognizable. I think that's the way Twitter puts on their policy is that if you must be prominently recognizable on some field to be verified. So say I'm a verified user and I belong to the Go Interrupt Twitter group. I should be able to create a non-users from a brand new wallet. I should be able to create a badge and give it to that wallet, to that new users, and that new users now, have his own wallet address, have his own ES name, and doesn't have to start with zero. Like people know this is someone probably um, with some kind of expert opinion or his opinion matters to the populace. These are fun new primitives that I think that I expect people will use in surprising ways that I haven't imagined. Some of the groups off the top of my head that will create once this feature is live are groups for different NFT owners, groups for different whales of specific tokens. We can use airdrop snapshot of big of big airdrops that happened in the past years. We can even use ETH2 stickers and create a semaphore group just for ETH2 sticker that a company self-manage. Yeah, the ideas and is I particularly want to integrate chat with autism sooner because I think the ability to send chat message as a DAO member or some kind of these semaphore group without leaking who the original owners is very powerful. Like we don't know how people use it, but with person to DAO communication or even DAO to DAO communications, well, I believe it's interesting and people will surprise us in the ways that use it. So with that said, that is my presentation that leaves about 13 minutes or 23 minutes. Yeah, 13 minutes for questions. I will leave this slides up here with my link. You can go to this link and see my profile. You can tweet or not tweet. You can post directly at me. Or if you want, you can also tweet directly at me on Twitter, and that's the best way to get my attentions. If not a Discord message. Thank you. think Justin said Web3.storage give us 1 TB free. I gotta look into that.
So you might have already mentioned it a little bit, but I guess what would you say was the biggest challenge in orchestrating all of this from kind of scratch? What was the biggest hurdle?
Um, I say the technical part is actually not that challenging. Like I'm building on top of a lot of existing ideas, existing solutions that people have already built. All I'm doing is I'm just gluing different pieces of puzzle together. Um, I think finding the right trade-off between um, okay, there's actually a few things. Finding the right trade-off between um, where to where is okay to be more centralized and where it's not okay to be more centralized. Um, and being very measured about that line is kind of tricky. We don't want to centralize certain part that we cannot decentralize in the future. We also don't want to unintentionally centralize part that give us too much power that we cannot give away in the future. These are situations that I personally don't want to get into as myself, and I don't want that for the network as well. And that's one challenge. And other challenge is refraining from coming up with some kind of tokens for the network. Like I think I pay a lot of attention to DeFi in the past. A lot of other projects also experiment with similar type of social network, but they put a token on top, which might not be bad. Like token by itself is not bad, but like token that doesn't need to exist is like it take away from the network. Now, if the token doesn't work, the network become less credible and people don't want to use it. Um, I kind of find it to be important to keep the two things separate. The network itself should serve a purpose as a public good. Um, and we can think about things like token in the future when it makes sense instead of just coming up with some kind of use case, push for a token launch, and then have the things go viral. That's not why we built it. And the third challenge is kind of building in the dark. Meeting Barry's and meeting the PSE team last year is really helpful. Um, Before that, I spent a lot of time just building by myself, not knowing if people give a shit about what I do. I
Yeah.
would just keep coding as an anonymous because I don't really want to tell people that I'm building this to my real life friends because I prefer to stay anonymous. Um, and you know that the feelings of being in the dark, not knowing if what you do matters, sucks a lot. And you know, being able to so for example, do a presentation like this, talk to like-minded people from PSE, you know, make me realize that yeah, there are a lot of people basically doing the same thing, building in the non, building in the dark, not knowing what they do matters, but we all have each other. Um, that's kind of the three challenges that I have.
Awesome. Super insightful. Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. It's awesome
Thanks.
work, man.
Yeah, I have a question. So you use this GunDB as a peer-to-peer network. I'm just wondering, for the ephemeral nodes like the browsers, do they persist anything between the sessions, or do they download everything fresh for every session?
They persist between sessions. So I believe GunDB use IndexedDB
Okay.
locally, and they are also running on a worker thread to make it faster. So yes, the session persists and the data persists between sessions.
Cool. Yeah, that's all I wanted to ask.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll be around for a bit longer. Feel free to hit me up on Discord. If not now, anytime. Especially if you have ideas around, um, any part of autism or any kind of feedback, please hit me up. I'm more than happy to jam. If you have VR chat, we can do a hangout session in VR chat. Watch a movie together and talk about autism and privacy in VR chat. Open invite. Cool. Thank you. Ceramic network and Web3 storage. Thank you, Justin. I will definitely take a look at both of them.
Thanks for sharing your problem statement at the beginning. It helped, um,
Thanks.
set the stage to understand the project more.
Thanks. Cool.
Thank you so much.
Talk to you guys later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Thanks.